I would like to ask you the same question as Kenny, except now we have to put a little bit of a different spin on it because there's been a challenge here from Kenny about he wants to hear what you have to say about that issue also. I assume you mean because Joshua Henry is in the role of Billy Bigelow. Is that why you said that, Kenny?
No,
Oh.
you said that.
How about that?
I've always respected, talking about revival, I've known Jack from afar for so many years when I was running a regional theater, and he was like who I looked up to running these major theater companies. So it's like he made it possible for us to even have jobs in the American theater. So that's sort of a revival too. It's like you see the way people do things, and you learn from that, and you add your thing onto it, and it's something else.
You see what I did?
No, I'm just joking.
It was a
I
different
just always
question.
want to hear from you.
So,
I feel I'm here representing the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Awards. I hardly know where to dig in here. First of all, why revive anything? It's very interesting what we choose to revive and what we don't revive. It's not a natural, necessary thing, particularly since we're turning out new artists all the time, all with individual voices who speak to their own generation. But there are these pieces that come back. We don't see too many revivals of Fig Leaves Are Falling or Any Wednesday or even a good play like Darkness at Noon. But the great plays, the great pieces, need to be told again and again. And we want to see them. As children, we want to hear those stories, Little Red Riding Hood and Cinderella. We want to hear them over and over again. We ask our parents to tell them again and again, even though we know how they're coming out. It's a fascinating thing that something sticks in your craw and you are not finished with it. For the better part of 25 years, I did, in fact, have the stewardship of the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, where the resident playwright was Shakespeare. And there are some 37 plays. All of them are not great. All of them don't get revived. How many productions of Two Noble Kinsmen have you seen? There's a reason for that. As great as he was, and he was no one greater, they don't all ask to be repeated. So for me, because I had to do 3 a year out there in the seasons of my youth, I had to choose what was, quote, relevant. By that I mean what story was ripe. And then I had to put one ear on the play and another in a contemporary situation, because you have two horses. You have the play itself that you want to do, and you have an audience mixed with people who know it, who've never seen it, who have no idea what it's all about. And all of those people need to hear the same story. So you stretch yourself on a loom of storytelling with one part of your heart respecting the writer, who is the raison d'etre for reviving it, and another, the nature of the audience that is expecting to see it. Let me give you a really bizarre, shocking, but kind of funny example. In the 80s, I think, God, is that possible? I was directing Othello at the Globe, and a phone call came from New York that asked if I wanted to do the Broadway revival of Damn Yankees. Now, I hadn't seen Damn Yankees since I was a child. I remembered going to a musical tent in Michigan and seeing it when I was 17 or 18, and it blew me away. It was Broadway with a capital B. It was sassy and funny and a great score and good-looking girls and the whole deal. Yes, of course I would be thrilled to do this revival. I had to suspend Othello, get on the plane that night, and fly to see the now deceased composer. That's why I'm telling the story. I arrived 24 hours to do this and get back to Othello, during which time I read the original book on the plane, not having seen it for years. And it was terrible. It was not only terrible, I was embarrassed, I was ashamed. I didn't know what George Abbott, who was alive at that time at the age of 105, he died at 107. 2 years of anger at me is what kept him going. We met, and I said to the producer, I can't do this. He said, why? And I said, women buy 70% of the theater seats. At the end of Damn Yankees, the wife says, as the husband comes home after having an affair with the handmaiden of the devil, don't tell me where you were. I never want to know. And I thought, there isn't a single respectful woman alive who isn't going to say, you see this fist? I said, we can't do this. Then began a long trajectory where finally I was allowed to rewrite the book of Damn Yankees from stem to gudgeon. Mr. Abbott realized that he could come out to San Diego and see the show there. And as I rather shrewdly said, Mr. Abbott, if you don't like it, we know your script works. We'll just junk it and do yours. You get a free look at this. So I redid it. I kept 4 of his lines, 4 jokes that the devil had that were funny. Who are you? Not a soul. That's pretty funny. And we did the show. Mr. Abbott came out for the opening. It was a huge success. I showed up dutifully the next day with my pad and pencil to get my notes. And he said to me, what difference would I say? They stood, didn't they? He was a very smart man. If I had a better idea than he had, he wanted it. And he took it. And we did it in New York. It ran 2 years in New York. It went on the road with Jerry Lewis. Made Mr. Abbott, not me. I didn't get any money for that. I got money to direct it, but I could not be part of the rights. But he was smart enough to say, this is what they want to hear. My job, folks, was not just to rewrite it. I wanted it to feel for that audience what I felt when I was 17 and saw it. The joy, the happiness, the lunacy, the deliciousness, the innocence of the show, with no politics at all. And I always thought if I had one wish that I could actually, fairy godmother says, you can do whatever you want. This is what I want. I would want the critics and one audience to see a matinee of the original show and then what we did in the evening, because nobody ever mentioned it. None of the reviews mentioned it. Nobody ever said, this is not the script that we had. I called Mr. Abbott once in the middle of the second act, and I said, I'm having trouble with the trial scene. He says, cut it. I said, Mr. Abbott, it's the only thing that happens in the second act. I can't get, oh yeah, that's right. He forgot, of course, that that's what the second act is about. But it was all about trying to nail that audience with not what they remembered, but what they felt. And when we're successful with these revivals, not only do you have a revelation that's new, you have the familiarity of something that you thought was yours. And I think that's basically what we're trying to do most of the time.
The production of The Sound of Music that Jack directed brilliantly, and what he did in terms of revival and rethinking of The Sound of Music, a show that was a success on Broadway as a star vehicle for Mary Martin, and in case you don't know it, it was made into a film. And of course, many people have said audiences will not accept what was on Broadway in 1949. Whereas I Have Confidence in Me, where you have to, where are the bicycles? Where's? This man, aside from the fact that he saw production in Moscow and thought there's heat in that relationship, guys, the script that, as you know, because you did brilliant lighting with it, it's the 1959 script, directed within an inch of its life, and people accept it like something they'd never seen before. So in that instance, the revelation of that revival was not to change anything.
That's right.
And I mean, there's, every time there are any twists and turns in this whole situation, but that one was kind of brilliant.